keep it simple, find your joy, lean in, and that community and family is at the crux of what we do. Welcome back to another episode of Illuminating Being. I'm Elizabeth Cook, and as always, I'm here with my dear friend and collaborator, Dr. Keith Summers. And so as we approached the end of the year, I think we both discussed kind of winding down and sharing, not really wrapping things up, but let's do a little reflection of, what have our conversations been? I know specifically family meals was a big one, the whole essence of what it means to eat whole foods and really, gravitating towards this space of, or maybe a deeper idea around belonging and connection. I think, let's wrap it up, kind of just share some of our key takeaways and then really allude towards what we want to journey into in this upcoming year. And I think you brought it to my attention, Keith, around this idea of the evolved nest, which we'll talk a bit about. It's really not new. It's really somewhat ancient, but really a space to explain why maybe this family, communal connectedness is of the utmost importance. Just a nice
Right.
reminder. And I look forward to exploring those topics.
Yeah.
So,
And let me just
welcome.
say thank you for driving this, Liz. This has been a journey of, I think, years in the making of conversations that we've carried on throughout visits to the office and making a connection in a deeper way about things and having this opportunity to sort of share our thoughts. I think we're not looking to be definitive. We're just looking to sort of broaden the ideas of what it means to be connected and look at some healthy ways of living and thriving.
And sometimes, I think that was actually being questioned yesterday, like, what is my end goal or like my North Star, kind of doing that whole, practice that I advise everyone to do. And, like you could say a lot of words, but I think it's truly keeping it simple as I just love to help others, but also you're reminding myself as well as anyone will listen to keep it simple, find your joy, lean in, and that community and family, is at the crux of, what we do. So, and I think, a lot of what we talked about last year was this idea of embracing family meals and really the importance
Right.
of that, the grounding, really just eating and sharing food with
Right.
a community. And so it's not just about nutrition, which we highly advocate to lean into that space,
Right.
but really a space to create like rhythm in your own lives, security or safety, and, being who you are,
Right.
authenticity. But really, I think slowing down, right? And noticing each other and to help regulate, these very fragmented and fast-paced days.
Well, and I think it other underpinning, and especially in the space I'm working in, that I see people coming from all different parts of the world with different not only values but also different heritages, different rituals, but also different access to foods and different socioeconomic levels. But the evening out of those sort of things is that basic needs of providing some food or having family meals doesn't require ostentatious presentations or excesses in food. Some of the best family meals are even in those families that don't have much, but they have them together. And so
Right.
that is critical to the well-being of the family and the child to get through times when you may not have as much. So there's a lot that's underpinned in those sort of processes.
Right. Kind of going back to the whole keep things simple, from the developmental standpoint of children.
Right.
They don't need to be these elaborate meals. They just need to be consistent. The child needs to feel seen. They need to feel safe in their bodies and their relationships with the food and with the people around them. And so, I think if we think about it, simplicity, meals offer that powerful space to do so.
And I think we're living in, hopefully this podcast is sort of connecting through technology. That is probably one of our biggest challenges when it comes to connecting now. There's nothing like the in-person, right? But, this is a tool to enhance those sort of things. So we really aren't looking for this to replace anything, but to sort of help people sort of reignite or sort of give some direction to how you can enhance what you're doing in your family, and maybe to identify things that you already do right? And you don't get acknowledgement or validation on things. And just like in pediatrics, I feel the work I do, I don't see results. I mean, I can diagnose an ear infection and do those sort of diagnostic things, which are short term and quick responses, and you get a validation and the sense of accomplishment. But being a pediatrician, the sense of accomplishment, or being a parent, is not a short minute, hour, day. It's a longitudinally long, experience. And so there are moments you can sort of be, we also look to take the judgment out of things. So we don't want to really judge how we're doing things as much as we want to sort of not even critique it, but sort of give some insights to how to, maybe improve, or maybe, take advantage of things you're already doing, acknowledge those things that people are doing, go with some intuition.
Yeah, I think, thinking about that, overarching, you're not seeing the results in the day to day, but like I'm in a space where, I have a 25-year-old and I have an 8-year-old and every age in between. And there's so much like, it's good for me to ground myself, keep it simple, because I'm actually seeing some of the, I wouldn't say outcome, but the overall like evolution of what my parenting skills have and my structure has provided to the elders. I have these youngins, and it's like, do I change? Do I pivot? Also acknowledging the fact that I've grown and evolved and changed. And it's just like an interesting mix, because it's like, is it results, or is it just this unawareness? And then how do you receive that
Right.
awareness and then take it into your day to day? So yeah, it's not really results. It's really just like this
Right.
indication that like staying steady and consistent and providing these
Yeah.
intuitive bits of knowledge is really powerful, and just a reminder to ourselves, I guess.
I mean, we're going to get
Uh,
into this evolved nest and this, I would say, other piece that I've been reading about is sort of the indigenous worldview, which I think will sort of lead us into the next phase of sort of some of our discussions and maybe next year's sort of topics. But I think it does underpin sort of what I would say our culture is about, more the I versus the we. And I think a lot of what we've discussed over this past year is more about the we, right? It's a
right.
communal effectiveness of like, it takes a village to raise a family, right? So, I mean, that has been sort of maybe overused, but that's an African sort of mantra that really holds true. You really, sure, we can, you know, succeed in doing things ourselves, but we're only going to be the best we're going to be is if we have others to be with us
Right.
and
And I do feel that, they're actually like, I remember reading an article of like the amount of labor and effort it would take to like have your own chicken, right? And to eat it. Right. Like just like this process of like tending and growing and nurturing. Like we can't,
right,
so like there actually is this reality that we actually can't do it alone. So how do we bring
right,
that back to the realities of like what exists for us in this modern day society? And you shared Evolved Nest, with me, and it was just like that another moment of seeing this powerful community that it's really a framework that
right,
comes from studying the indigenous cultures that you kind of been diving into, um, and the history as humans, right? So cultures across species, there's this common condition. So I look forward to exploring them. From what I
right,
saw, it was really about what you said is like the physical closeness, community support, shared caregiving, which I'm a big advocate for, and it's
right,
actually something it takes a village. I've created very strong network of caregivers, not all familial, which I think is key. I think we
right,
all
right,
feel that only our family can care, but
right.
there's such a beautiful world of caregivers. And then, that whole space of rituals, right? Of around food and rest. I mean, it's all of it. So it's a great find, and I look forward to exploring it with you.
Well, and I think some of the things we've also touched on that are important, it's multi-generational. So I think we've, in America, I think, sort of designated sort of like our lifetime and roles in this sort of younger, family-driven parent, but there's so much wisdom and so much to be gained. And, my father being in assisted living, I mean, there's a community there that, sort of it's the process of where, families maybe had extended family members living with them. We don't do that like we did in previous times, but how do we sort of stay engaged with that generation? They have so much to share, so much wisdom. we may disagree with some of the things that they did. They may have different insights to things, but their world and the time they grew up was so different than ours in some ways. In many ways, it's the same, right? The challenges that we have that I see with parents are not much different. Some of the bigger challenges may reflect the sort of societal change in technology and things like how do you keep it simple, right? I mean, I think it's a mantra. It's two things I would say is the slow down and the keep it simple. Those are sort of things that ring true for me when I talk to families, is that you don't need all these fancy gadgets to
Right.
be a successful parent.
And I think that's the evolved nest, I think the term, right? It's not it's this idea that children were never meant to be raised in isolation, and really
Right.
neither were the parents, right? So, and we're seeing this rise of, well, really it's the language we use too, like the word anxiety, right? Like that wasn't a
Right.
word that like my mother used as a
Right.
child, nor did she use it raising me. And then it's
Right.
now like you can't turn left or right without someone stating that. And then also, there's a big issue around sleep issues, right? Like there's that whole space of like the two sleeps, which I've been kind of reading about, right? Like we used to reset our bodies and wake up in the middle of the night. And like there was a lot of gatherings in that period of time
Right.
before the clocks and, fictitious lighting, that
Right.
electricity. But
Right.
there's such a powerful space to like understand what was
Thomas
actually
Edison,
happening.
all of his
Yeah, it's
great
all his fault. um, but there's like, because of the lack of sleep and this space, there's like a hard space to regulate our emotions because
right.
a lot happens when we're sleeping. And then, so that's happening to
Really.
parents and children at the same time. So I think there is like this kind of tipping point of an
Right.
awareness, because I think a lot of that conversation is around us. And, I look forward to sharing, what we learn and how we are applying it to our day to day. So it could be helpful to others.
I think that that's sort of what, is exciting about these conversations is that it's not, it's not limited. It's not like this is what you do type of scenarios. Like we're not looking to sort of solve a specific problem with, okay, you have a leak, we need to plug it, type of thing. This is about sort of growth of our own persons, helping to nurture the sort of children, families. We've certainly talked to it. We have a lot of different family dynamics that go on. There's spoken and unspoken sort of things that we certainly see happening all the time. Both of us have sort of experienced the family's judgment or view of our changes that we're trying to enact, maybe some less sympathetic or empathetic. But with time, some of them have sort of come on board to understand those sort of things. And it does take time. And change is not always easy for anyone.
Tell me about it. My other part of my life is, managing change within a industry that's pretty strict in their ways.
Patriarchal.
Yeah. Hierarchical. This is how we've done it. It's really a complexity of systems. But I mean, I'm on the daily relating the power grid to our human bodies. So I feel like it's such a space of like really magic. But I think also important to like lean into the unknown and
Right.
really, not, especially like as evolving relationships or like parenting styles or, the next best gadget. It's, really grounding. Why are you asked that question? Why is this
Right.
becoming a reality? Why are you looking for a quick fix? And, it's such a spectrum of thought. So we could talk about these things all
Right.
day,
So
every day.
this has been a big year for my family because we've had two weddings and now we've taken on and have two daughter-in-laws and daughters. So our world is changing and evolving, but sort of watching the growth and nurture and who they've become and embracing that and seeing how they're taking on moving forward with their lives. What are some of the things that we've done that have impacted them? We don't want to say we did this or we did that, but hopefully they are the people they are through some of the influential things we've done.
And I also find myself in a space of like, and I think it was a movie, but I think we've said it. An indication of good parenting is this awareness of becoming irrelevant. So,
Right.
how do I, and especially I'm like in the sandwich, right? We're in the sandwich phase of like you have your parents and your children, and we're all evolving into adults. And it's like, how do you say just enough but say nothing? Right? How do you, I
There
mean,
you go.
really, our goals is really to empower girls to have their own voice. right? And to no longer depend, but also here we are talking
Right.
about communal connections and the importance of each other. I mean, it's such a gray area, but like, I mean, not to be like, well, I guess I could be philosophical on this podcast, but
Sure.
like this it's love, right? Like what does
Right.
it mean to love unconditionally, creating the boundaries, creating the distance, but also creating a space to come back to. I remember my 12-year-old just asked, like, would you be mad at me if I moved to California? And I was like, like, what I say right now could like truthfully be a seed planted. Like, this is me driving, right? I'm like, could be a motivator, or it could be a deterrent. Like, it was, and it's like, okay, love, right? The decisions you make as you become older, my love for you won't change. Now, granted,
Right.
you moving across the country will create a dynamic that, will change how
Right.
we integrate day to day. And like, I don't,
Right.
I'll be heartbroken. Just kidding. I didn't say
Right.
that. But
Well, and
there's
the
a
question is what drove that comment, right? She's 12. Is she seen something? Is she like dreaming big to
right. Like, is
be
there a dream? I mean, I
something?
know what the dream is, but right, is there reality to that existing? But like me saying something at that moment was like pivotal. And that, like, what is a relationship across a country, right? What is a relationship across the ocean? I mean, there's love there, but like
Right.
what is it, and what decisions you make to create that strong community? I mean, is ever more important.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there because the question is, our kids make statements and then they're watching our body language. So
Yeah.
it's sort of like whether the answer comes out in the minute, the second, whatever, there's already like, oh my gosh, what did she just say? And if she's 12 saying it versus 24 saying it, there's different impetus to
Right.
it's really happening tomorrow. And so, but it's, we're not prepared for like the every question that could scenario come up in life that, okay, I'm prepared for this one. I want to go out with a boyfriend. I want to go get the car. I mean, things that are pretty you're prepared for in some respect. These other ones are like out of the blue
Right.
that you don't. I want to think about that, but and I think one of the things we try to talk about is just making the reflective statement and repeating what they say. So you
Right.
give yourself the time sort of like sort it out. Oh, that's an interesting comment. What do you mean by that? Or something, right? So it's the same with any conversation or having dinner conversations, right? I think that's the family meals. This is what's so valuable is that there's a trust and there's a love, but there's a safety in being able to sort of say the things for us to say them to our kids, but for our kids to feel safe that they can pose these sort of questions without being like judged like, no, you can't do that. I mean,
Right.
I want to bring friends over and smoke pot or something.
I, you know, I also find there's this, maybe just to share it, like here, like this realization that a lot of like, I love movies, but I'm in a space now that I watch a movie and afterwards I'm like, that whole production, that whole plot, that whole execution was like for something that either, like a storyline that I probably deal with 5, 6 times a day, right? Like
Right.
in regards to like saying something that maybe have turned someone inward, or like creating an environment that doesn't allow someone to grow. I
Right.
think there's so much there. And then so I always find, maybe I think too much, is like as I'm growing into this space of, my, I guess, second half of life, is say less, even though I think so much, because like your
Right.
words matter. And I think the more we realize how powerful our words are to all the people around us,
Right.
have a profound impact, positive or negative.
Right. I think that's one of the other things that I frequently say less is more, right? So that
Right.
is not uncommon, right? So I think there are people who just expound and don't stop talking. And then you sort
Right.
of lose your attention to like, what are they trying to, confer? Like, what's the information? What's the purpose of this? So being succinct and minding our words as well as the volume can be
I
helpful.
I guess I had to share another. So this also just happened, was like we're at a big dinner and one of my children make a comment, and then I was like, "Oh, what makes you say that?" And then I then followed up with a question. And then he shared like something over and above, which was like, okay, like, and it was, kind of like not appetizing towards like us eating. And so I was like, I'm not sure why you said that because like he's like, well, you asked. And then we went into this debate of like what I actually asked versus what he heard. And it was like, I think a profound lesson to everyone around us. It was like, let's just agree to disagree that what I said and what you heard was not right. And
Not
that happens
all the time.
all the time. And just so having an awareness to feel safe to be able to have that back and forth, I think was powerful, but also, somewhat comical. But it's a reality that, what we hear and what we perceive is dynamically different. So again, the
But
power
that
of the
that
words.
speaks to what the value of a family meal is. So that space of like having conversation, everybody seeing how you work through a disagreement, a topic, something that's, maybe on everybody's top of mind or maybe on nobody's top of mind. But it's sort of role modeling, right? So
Right.
how we behave and how we interact. Our kids, they're watching I tell the parents from the moment they take that first breath, they have eyes on us and everything we do. So whether
No pressure.
no pressure. Whether they understand, but they are, like you said, this whole electrical circuit that's us, just like the electrical grid is creating memories, creating processes that inform this newborn to become child, to become young adult into who they are going to become.
Right.
So we don't have a way to measure it all. I don't really want to find a way to measure it all other than we see who they become. And that's a bigger challenge in some respects.
Yeah. And, thinking about, what we want to dive into over the next few weeks, months in our conversation is like everything happening in the world. It's heavy. The pace, the uncertainty, really the noise.
Right.
I continuously keep coming back to this question, which I think is why we resonate so much with this family meal idea, but how to help families and ourselves by you and I just sharing feel more grounded. It's not to add more to anyone's
Right.
plate. That's like another thing with the my coaching philosophy and my kind of keep it simple and like this idea of finding joy. It's not about adding more. It's by centering your own internal conversations
Right.
to what actually matters, right? And so, one area I think we're going to dive into over the next is just this idea of like women's health and from like the prenatal to like the giving of birth to like the actual
Right.
nurturing of the baby. I mean, it takes both, but just like,
Right.
women are in this constant conversation of noise are, the burden of the household as well as working full time, right? As of all these dynamics, but like at the essence of it is this realization of the communal connection it's a must for all
Right.
parties. And so
Well,
just
yeah.
getting
And
back
I
to
think,
those roots,
yeah,
I look
I mean,
forward
the
to.
indigenous piece that, I also do this whole worldview assessment or chart sort of looks at, I mean, the indigenous populations were more matrilineal. I mean, they really had a greater focus on women, but they also understood because it was a much more collaborative. And I think in general, when we look at how women approach things, there's a lot greater collaboration in way things are done and processes and functions that happen. And just raising a family. I mean, that management skill level is collaborative in general. On the other side is sort of this rigidity and more patriarchal, which is more, about the sort of process. I think I wrote down a few things that it's more fear-based. It's living without the same strong social purpose, a much more focus on self and personal gain. And I think as a mother and as women, there's the broader view of like everybody
Right.
being better off, not just one individual. Yes, we want people to thrive. One of the things I think the evolved nest, I think it's about flourishing. And so I think part of what I'm taking from what we've had our discussions, it's sort of like nourish to flourish. Like I feel like we have to nourish not just from a, standpoint, but a soul, right? Our spirit, our well-being has to be also reinforced by the sort of ways we see the world and connect with people. And that helps to flourish. It's not that we can prevent everything from happening, right? I mean, even eating the most healthy diet doesn't mean that there isn't something that can happen to you, right? I think
Right.
people are like, I did this crazy diet, I did all the right things, and yet I still got X, Y, or Z. Well, I mean, it's more complicated than that, right?
And just thinking about like, and I think you actually sent that chart that
Yeah.
we'll talk about, but right, this real view of kind of indigenous versus like this modern industrialized dominant evolutionary space that we've really only been in for like 140 years, like the Industrial Revolution, right? And like what that has done, and I guess, not to parallel my other passion, which is, understanding the complexities of this machine that we built that has transformed our lives. But, a big part of that reality right now is like to execute and build out this machine required a very linear type thinking, a very hierarchical execution. And actually, like computer science, which, think about like what's happening in this whole like AI
Right.
space. There's this agile type of project execution, which was more collaborative and flexible. And there was this whole new energy to like understanding like how to evolve in this new space, which,
Right.
we tied a lot of dominant hierarchies to it. But like when you think about where we are right now, it require like it, as in like us to be able to transform with this massive machine as well as
Right.
this indigenous awareness of who we are as beings. It requires this very communal essence, which is hard to like move through, this machine that has been created. Anyway, like it's so connected, and it's like, bringing that leadership, that thought leadership, that awareness of what is required to make a team, a community, a civilization thrive is very
Right.
based
Well, I
in the
think
ancient wisdom, I guess.
right, and the ancient wisdom and the indigenous people didn't see ownership of the land,
Right.
right? So that's a huge piece that we've sort of made a big change, right? So we own, I mean, the British Empire went all over the world. They took over everything. The American colonization, it's now about how much do you own, what do you own? And so it sort of makes it a sort of competitive sort of piece. And so I mean, it is the world we live in, so we can't just sort of go off on the
Right.
find a place that is, free of this. It's almost non-existent, but that doesn't mean we can't move towards some of these, I think, greater good types of thinkings, right? And I do think people probably could connect more with it, but the reality is, how do you feed your family? You need a job.
Yeah,
We
like
don't have the social networks for destroying some of that because you don't have a job, you don't have health insurance. Is it a right, or is it something that you have to work harder to get these sort of things? And plenty of people work pretty hard and they don't get these things.
right,
We've
like
we
what is it?
value the wrong things in some respects, but that's a whole nother tangent.
Right, and I guess to our listeners and to us, we can be pretty heady pretty quick, but I think, keeping it simple, we want to explore like what it really means to nourish families, not just feed them, right? And then tapping into like how this indigenous wisdom can really inform this modern parenting and caregiving space, and really how we can connect with our bodies and intuition. Like tapping into that reality is that could then drive, a ripple effect to maybe,
Like,
that whole domino vision where it's a small domino can take down a tire, right? Like from a ripple
well,
effect.
it's like, well, how do you start a revolution, right? The first person isn't the person that does it, but the second person who follows generates the interest, and that others start to see that. So I think part of I think beginning this podcast is not about that we are just going to change the world and that we're not in this for some monetary gain, to sort of like better ourselves and make this the next meta or something, but we're really in it for the just joy we have in sort of like sharing these conversations, having these conversations, and wanting to expand it so that more people could maybe connect with this, and that there's a yearning that people are looking for something, and that we're hopefully authentic in this sort of conversation. We're not looking to be something that's going to save the world. Maybe it will save the world, but we would hope to sort of like give a viewpoint that, maybe isn't heard as often.
Right. Right. So how like small shifts in our food, our rhythm, our daily rhythm and connection can create change, right? And I think that's isn't going backwards. It's really the integration of what we've forgotten
Right.
and with where we are now. So I look forward to like those unwinding those
Right.
conversations.
So I do have, as we've done, I may have read this one before, but Thich Nhat Hanh, one of our favorite writers. And I thought this one was just, apropos. It's called Take Your Time. It's good to take time to eat because the time for a meal can be a very happy time. Take time to enjoy your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Enjoy your meal, stop the thinking, and be there fully, body and mind. So I think it sort of speaks to being present,
Yeah.
slowing down. We've got our technologies. Everybody gets their phone, has their phone, put them away from the table. I mean, you get a little ding. Everybody's sort of looking, what's that? You know, keep the focus on who you're with and on the meal. So still have a landline. I mean, if there's truly an emergency,
You'll get a hold. They'll get a
you
hold
get
of you.
get a hold of you. They'll call back. So I think
Love
sort
it.
of some good insights on what I think we project for the future of this podcast
Yeah.
is to carry on this conversation.
So, with gratitude, thanks for showing up and having this conversation. For our listeners who are willing to pause and reflect, thank you for showing up and being a part. And I would say if this conversation resonated with our listeners, I invite you to sit with it. Just notice where your own nest feels strong and where it may need more care or support or, just more softness in this very hard world that we're living in. And until next time, take good care of
Well,
yourself.
I'm wishing you a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever holiday. And these are usually holidays where we get together and celebrate with family. So take the time to recognize who you're with and be present, not just with presence, but
With
with
presence.
presence.
Love it.
So,
Well, thank you.
all
Bye.
right. Awesome.